All right, I think we'll begin. Hello, everyone. I'm Mathilde, and I'm a public program curator here at the Building Centre. Thank you all very much for coming to our second talk of the Woodwork series, which is kindly supported by Wood for Good. So this series is actually part of our Conversations about Climate Change program, which we've been producing alongside the Timber Trade Federation. That includes an exhibition that we are very delighted to say is installed in our Saul Street galleries downstairs. But unfortunately, with lockdown, obviously we can't open to the public. So we've made the exhibition digitally available on our website so that hopefully you can visit from the comfort of your own home. So today's talk looked at GotlandsHem, new low carbon headquarters in Sweden. And we're delighted to have Kirsten Haggart with us today, who's the lead project architect, to share her timber experiences with us today. So Kirsten is a senior associate at Waugh Thistleton Architects and has 20 years of design experience under her belt. She's known for her creation of site-sensitive developments and work on a number of timber projects, which include the following: Murray Grove in Hackney, which was the first tall urban housing project to be built entirely out of tongue teasers, honestly.
CLT, just say CLT.
CLT. She's also worked on Multiply, which was a carbon neutral pavilion outside of the Victoria and Albert Museum. And more recently, Kirsten has also developed the concept of Trinesia, which is a zero carbon community of 1,600 homes and a cultural hub built on top of the Bergen Lake in Norway. So we're in great hands today. I should mention that before we start, this talk is being recorded and it will be made available on the Building Centre's YouTube channel and our website. I'll try and add a link in the chat at the end. And if you have any questions for Kirsten, please feel free to ask your questions using the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. And we'll do our best to answer your questions at the end of the presentation. So with that in mind, it is my pleasure to hand over to you, Kirsten.
Thank you. I will try and share my screen. Here we go. Can you see that? Hopefully yes. Everybody can see that now. So thank you for inviting me to do a talk today. It's always good to be talking with the Building Centre, who are so focused on materiality, which is and timber, which is great. So for those who don't know me, I'm from Kirsten Haggart. I'm from Waugh Thistleton Architects. We normally work out of an office in Shoreditch, but now we're sort of dispersed around the globe, including Spain, Italy, Scotland, Ireland, and Peterborough. We work on a variety of different projects. We've done community projects, the Bushy Cemetery, which was nominated for a Sterling Prize a couple of years ago. Commercial with a sustainable focus, which this is Orsman Road, which was recently completed, a timber and steel structure, and also housing and mixed use, as Mathilde said, a lot of timber in all our work. Research is becoming increasingly a fundamental part of what we do. And one of the biggest projects that we're working on at the moment is a research project funded by the EU as part of the Horizon 2020 funding. And we're working with 21 partners across Europe to develop a post and beam timber system, which could be used for commercial and residential, with a non-structural facade panel that can meet all aims to meet all regulations across Europe, and also is working towards addressing some of the barriers that people have and the perceptions that people have towards timber construction, but the ultimate goal being to support the construction industry in moving towards the Paris Agreement targets, looking at sequestered carbon as a key reduction factor that we need to consider, and to do that we need to be substituting timber for concrete and steel. So I would really encourage you to look at the Building Wood website. It's a 4-year project. We're 2 years or 18 months in at the moment, so there will be lots coming out of that, and a lot of collaboration with industry, universities, and also policymakers, which could influence the way we're designing in the future. We work with a variety of different clients, both at home and abroad. We're working a lot in Scandinavia, in Italy, the Netherlands, and the States. And essentially, I mean, it's hard to sum up an ethos of a practice in just one slide, but this kind of goes towards that. And it's talking about an integrated approach where we collaborate with our consultants and our clients to get a sustainable project that, that from the very outset, the design and the concept has minimizing energy and the carbon footprint of the building at the heart of the concept in the beginning. Thinking about innovation, about zero carbon structures, and DFMA is increasingly a major part of our portfolio of what we're doing, and the research that we're doing as well. And then those two things combining to create environments that are healthy and are enjoyable to be in and are beautiful. So this talk is primarily about a competition that we did last year during lockdown for GotlandsHem, who are a housing association in Gotland in Sweden. And their ambition was to create a new headquarters that would give them the flexibility to have office space. They needed some maintenance space for all the washing machines and various items from their homes that they own to be refurbished and maintained. They also have quite a large fleet of electric vehicles which needed to be maintained as well. And then also to give them some commercial space which they can rent out, as well as a few residential flats which they use for when people are either having their homes refurbished or they're between homes. So it had to be a very sustainable project and an inclusive one, not only for the people who worked at GotlandsHem, but also for the wider community that they cater for. So where is Gotland? It is an island off the coast of Sweden. It's about a 40-minute flight from Stockholm to Sweden, to Gotland. And on this project, we worked with In Praise of Shadows and Land, whose icons haven't shown up very well there. But we'd been working with them on another project in Stockholm, Åsterfältet, which was a development for, I think it's about 130 homes. And we had a really great collaboration. We've got very similar approach to materiality and sustainability. And that led us to working together on this project, which proved very fruitful. So the site is just outside Visby, which is the capital of Gotland. And you can see here that it is sort of on this transition between the urban and the rural. It's quite a bleak place. The climate in Gotland is quite, it being an island, a northerly island, you get quite strong winds, quite a lot of rain, not a huge amount of snow, but you know, it's quite a rough climate. And you can see here that it's also got this kind of strange mix of uses around it at the moment. They've been developing some housing up here. There's some light industrial over here. There's allotments on either side of the site, and then it sort of bleeds out into meadows. So taking as our starting point, really the vernacular of the region, because what we need to consider is the climatic context of where we're working, and I think that's fundamental to developing a sustainable architecture. So we looked at both the medieval origins of the old town of Gotland, of Visby, and then also the vernacular farm agricultural architecture, which tends to create these sort of protected spaces within which people can congregate and feel protected from the environment. And so the concept for the building, which tied in with the brief, really was to create a space where people felt safe and could communicate and be together in which was accessible for everybody. So as a concept, from the beginning, we wanted to define the streetscape. The area feels very loose at the moment. It's still being established. So this building's aim was to help to create the community. And then this connection with the local landscape and the allotments on either side, as well as with the street, was really important, because we wanted to make sure that people were drawn into the building, not the users of it, but also people from the local area. So then we developed the courtyard concept, drawing on that for farmscape architecture. And then the external circulation was also an important factor. They do have a lot of cars, and albeit a lot of them are electric, but we needed to consider deliveries as well. So making sure that those points of access for vehicles was completely separate from the pedestrian access was a really important part of the brief. And then how we distributed the uses within the volumes was really quite straightforward, because the form that we'd established sort of was very easy to split and to divide into the various uses. So we have a kind of commercial wing here, which is the rentable space. The residential and entrance facilities were all in this area. Our more administrative and maintenance area was at the back here, and then there's some workshops for maintaining and recycling materials and products. And then defining the form and taking that farm typology, so that within the landscape this became it has a very clear identity. And I think it was important that we adopted pitched roofs because of the climatic conditions as well, and also referencing what had gone before. And so the landscape and urban realm were a really fundamental part of the development and how we moved the project forward. And it was a fantastic way to work with land and in Praise of Shadows in such a collaborative way to kind of establish the essence of what we were trying to do together. So the project was split into sort of essentially three kind of outdoor spaces, which could contribute as well to the internal arrangement of the project. So there was the activity street, which again is this connection between the street, which links up to the housing up here, and the landscape. And the idea about this was it would be a multi-function space where you could have outdoor activities, flea markets, that kind of thing, and could also link to the commercial building or arm of the project here. Then we wanted to make sure there was an articulation and a connection with the street, and that's an important aspect of it. But primarily, we've got this central courtyard, which forms a sort of oasis in the middle of the project, creating a sort of ecosystem for not only the foliage and trees and landscape that we want to kind of incorporate in this space, but also for the interaction of people who are using it, be they from the office development itself or from the wider community. But in addition, we created a first floor level terrace, which links directly to the office space. So that could be a green growing area for the office users. It also then linked with a really wide staircase down into the courtyard. And so you can see in this bottom section how the concept is that we create this oasis in the middle with, I think one of the trees specified was a walnut tree. And it creates a little ecosystem of itself, which is used by the users of the building, but also the wider community. And this gives you a sort of flavour of what the essence of that space might be. And you can see here, this is this very wide staircase at an angle which comes down into the courtyard, which can be used for doing talks or just sitting and having a chat with your colleagues. And here on plan, it might not be super easy to see this depending on your screen size, but essentially what we have then in terms of the programme is we've got a very transparent facade on this wing here. So as you come down the street, you can see through into the tropical garden. And we've got a cafe on the corner with the entrance, the main entrance here and reception. Both sides of this space are colonnaded, so you're protected from the elements as you walk through, and also helps to create that urban frontage onto the main street. Towards the back, we've got the garage and maintenance space. We've got the workshop, which also allows some of the activities in here to spill out into the courtyard, encouraging that notion of upcycling and recycling and making that a visible part of the activities that are going on in the project. And then this block here is primarily for a rentable space. The idea was that this could be, it could be a greengrocers, it could be a plant shop, it could be anything on the corner here, but this notion of this building sort of slightly splaying out and allowing people to be drawn into the main courtyard space was the key part of it. And this whole frontage here can open out. So if people did want to have a market or whatever in this space, then that could be an opportunity for that. And then on the upper floors, we've got the residential units in this section. There was just 4 of those. And balconies facing onto the street, creating a connection with the residential buildings further down the road, and also a kind of, again, thinking about the urban expression of the building. And then this rather beautiful office space on the upper floor with the connection out onto a roof terrace and this link down into the garden. So they have views out in all directions across to the housing as well as into the courtyard. There's also very typically Scandinavian, they have a gym and a sauna, and all that is housed in this area here, and their own cafe as well, which is rather nice. Then thinking about how the sustainability and the end of life of the project as well, to try and minimize the carbon footprint of the building overall. And there were a few aspects that we were thinking about with this. There's the kind of recycling aspect, which I've mentioned before, that GotlandsHem already have as part of their DNA, as it were. So we wanted to think about, and we have considered in the way that the foundations are made, where we would kind of recycle backfill from demolished projects, or any excavations we'd reuse on the site. We talked to GotlandsHem about having an audit of projects that they are thinking of refurbishing or updating, and then potentially having using recycled materials and products from there. But primarily thinking about the structure itself and how we could make it as simple as possible to allow for it to be demountable at the end of its life. So the structure is made from glulam beams and columns with a rib deck floor plate. And the form of the building is consistent throughout, so that you have a minimum number of components and connections, or different types of connections, which means that it's very simple and quick to build. It's very lightweight, so the foundations are minimal. But also at the end of life, it can be demounted and reused. In addition to that, we looked at a non-structural facade, which was based on 2.4 meter bays of either solid, openable, or glazed and semi-glazed elements, which you could then use, and it could be really adaptable to actually changes in use over time, because the client wasn't sure about how much office space they would need long term, or how much of that commercial space they would need. So this kit of parts that we designed for them allows for that flexibility in the future, and for reallocating where they might have housing versus office and vice versa. And then in terms of the materiality that we considered, it was very important to us to have most of the materials exposed, so there was no requirement for additional plasterboard if necessary. You know, we would try to avoid that, so that you're minimizing the number of components in the building itself. And then the materials that are relatively low maintenance, so this is a cedar wood, which is a thermally modified timber, which doesn't need a huge amount of maintenance, and then thinking about metal roofing, so that the longevity of the materials was very important, and also the recyclability of them as well. So this gives you the overview of the ground floor plan, and I'll just check the time, so I'm pretty much on schedule, but you can see that you know, the activity that we're trying to create, and this essentially, this oasis formed the fulcrum for the whole project, and I think was entirely driven out of the climatic conditions that the project was sited in. And then some internal views of what that office space might look like, and that's the cafe with the view through to the courtyard space. A place of activity, of collaboration, and communication. And then finally, the street view. Hopefully you'll agree it kind of creates a nice presence and draws people into the community beyond, and the housing that's been developed down there. So I hope that gives you a very quick run through of the project and the kind of values and principles that we use to kind of develop it for the competition, which we won in September. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirsten. Thank you. What I love about this project is it really reminds me of this movement towards circular economy, circular design and circular economy principles, where you have repair workshops, you design structures to be demountable and using renewable sources. So thank you very much. It's great. We actually have a couple of questions. The first one being, how is the GotlandsHem building heated? Are there any general comments on heating timber buildings?
The project has very good thermal properties, so we're minimizing the heating load from the outset. I think we went for a ground source heat pump in the end, but I can't quite remember. But there aren't really any specific requirements for timber buildings. You tend to, as we all tend to do these days, maybe using underfloor heating, which is quite a low temperature system anyway. So yeah, so there's no specific requirements for timber buildings.
Okay, great. We have a second question, which is, are the fire regulations different to the UK? If so, what issues did you face?
Well, because this building is only 2 stories, the fire regulations are fairly, they're not very onerous. It's when you get much taller buildings where fire regulations tend to be more onerous. So, you know, in the UK on a 2-story building, the idea is that you can escape from the first floor. You can, you know, almost jump out of the window. So there weren't really any particular fire regulation issues with this project. And if anything, in terms of, you know, Europe and fire regs there versus here, what we're finding with the Building Wood project is that actually they're less onerous on the continent now, mainly because of Grenfell. And I think that we don't know how that will sort of pan out long term, whether that will go across into Europe or not. But I think it's something that's really important that we're working very hard to kind of to make, as part of the Building Wood project, is to clarify the understanding that people have of timber, because it is a safe product to use even for high-rise buildings.
Okay, I think we've got quite a few questions now, actually. Maybe a couple more. I have Cyax wood, ? Is that a coating or a modified timber cladding?
It's timber that has been thermally modified. So it's called Cyax wood. It's I think it's SCIOO. It's got, if you look it up, it's very nice. They've got a very nice range of different products. I think it's Scandinavian. I must admit, I hadn't heard of it in the UK, but it's you know, it's a good product. Very durable, long lasting.
Great. Okay, we'll do one more question. Hi Kirsten, great talk. Was just wondering if you or the company had any more specific ideas for how the demountable structure could be reused.
That's an interesting question, because when we're thinking about life cycle analysis for products, which I think will become more and more part of planning policy as well as building regs, that we'll need to prove that the materials we're working with can be recycled and what their embodied carbon is. The project that we're working on with the European Union, sorry to keep talking about that one, but we're working with a company called Rothablas, who do timber connections. And it's a really interesting, you really have to think obviously about it from the very early design stages, because bolted connections are better than screwed or nailed connections. And so how the whole system fits together is fundamental to obviously how it can be taken apart in the future. But I guess the question around how timber buildings could be used later is also an ongoing discussion that we're having about whether CLT or glulam factories might recycle the wood that are in these buildings. How you could perhaps make a smaller building, you know, take parts of a timber structure and reuse it for smaller projects like single family housing or something like that. And then from that level, it goes into sort of recycling the timber to make bedding for animals or things like that. So I think it's because it's quite, structural timber is quite new, relatively speaking. Buildings haven't come to the end of their lifetime yet. So we're still looking at those options and actually working with the Norwegian Technical Institute and the Danish Technical Institute to come up with some really good options for how we can reuse timber in buildings to make sure that it has a really long life.
Okay, well, thank you. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for. if anyone has any more questions, please feel free to email them to me at msavry@buildingcentre.co.uk, and I'll share those questions and hopefully come back with some answers. Thank you so much, Kirsten, for sharing your genius. And thank you all for watching. The talk, as I said, will be made available on YouTube and our website. I've just added the link in the chat. And I hope you can join us for next week Wood Talk, which will be with Clementine Blakemore. And that's it. Well, thank you so much, Kirsten.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thank you.
Happy. See you soon. Bye.